I'm Mel Stewart, and this is a GMM podcast. Joining me today, University of Tennessee head coach Matt Kredich, who has been chasing fast swimming for 40 years. We go deep on this podcast. We go all the way back to the beginnings. We go back to college when he was 19 years old, and he got cancer and was in the hospital for 60 days. And his coach was with him there, supporting him through this challenge in his life and how that inspired him to be a coach. We talk about his coaching philosophy through the decades. We talk about fatherhood and how raising an autistic son, Ben, taught him patience. We talk about the loss of his son and how the aftermath of grief spiraled out and how that's changed him as a person and evolved him as a coach today. This is a deep conversation, 100 minutes. I think you're going to like it. Matt Kredich. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Doing great, Mel. It's great to see you.
Just so everybody knows in the background, we've been going back and forth, and we've been planning this for a while, but I've always wanted to feature you in our magazine, and we finally had that opportunity. One of our feature writers, Anya, got your attention at this busy time during the season, and that feature is going to come out in the next issue of SwimSwam Magazine. It's going to drop mid to late March, and the title of it is "What Remains When the Stopwatch Stops." And I think it is the best feature on a coach that we have ever produced in the magazine. And you haven't read it yet. So I just want you
I'm excited to read about it. That's a great title. I love it.
Well, I think it epitomizes what's going on. And I appreciate you taking time to do this podcast. But I want to get into it a little bit. And a big reason why I wanted to talk to you and I wanted this feature in the magazine is this one thing that I always come back to is hearing from parents and from kids when they're trying to make decisions about college. And when I was a young man, it was, I just want to swim fast and be great and win medals. And that changed with my experience. And I went, no, I need to know that coach who's going to be a third row parent cares as much about me as my parents care about me and has an impact in my life. And you fall in that bucket.
Thank you.
You're in that bucket because of experience. And I don't know if have you ever gotten that feedback or do you think that way?
I have gotten that feedback. I've also, I think, heard plenty of people's experience where they have that and heard plenty of people's experience where they don't have that from a coach. And I mean, I've been a coach for many decades now and have thought a lot about it. And to me, the role of a coach, and I said this to Anya, it's almost like it fits into an archetypal role as mentor, basically. You know, someone who is a guide or an advisor, someone who leads you, challenges you through a life. And I think we all need them. We all seek them. And there are many different ways that coach can interface with the human being as they're developing. And so I think in my career, I've tried to expand on that idea of what a coach is and who I am as a coach, who I want to be to the people that I coach. So it's certainly evolved, and including having some things that I don't want to be.
When I think about this topic, I often think about conversations I had with Eddie Reese, who I've been interfacing with since 1980. And Eddie used to say this early on, and I didn't understand it. He said, I really define my success by how many kids invite me to their weddings, by do I still get the Christmas card? Am I still in their lives years and years later? And I didn't get that. And it seems like that's a really important benchmark. And it sort of epitomizes and crystallizes what we're talking about right now. My sneaking suspicion is that it is experience that we get as adults that shape us. And oftentimes it's not always on deck. There's something you said early in the magazine feature, which I read about 50 times. And you said that coaching is about belief. Can we just start there? What does that mean?
So I was actually having this conversation with a swimmer yesterday who was struggling. We're 7 days out from SECs and struggling with his belief in himself. Like, I don't know what I'm going to be able to do. And I asked him if he had that at any point in the fall, like if he had a vision that what he was trying to do on that day had a role and was fitting into what he was trying to create in February and March. And he basically said sometimes. And I had a moment where I thought I need to do a better job of helping him with that. So we had that discussion at that moment. But for me, it's being able to look at an athlete and look at them as a human being, know what they want, and then have my vision for how they're going to get there and what they can possibly do when they get where they want to go. Have that vision be communicated to them. And that vision is the same thing as belief. Like we're talking about doing things that you've never done before. So it only exists in one's mind and hopefully in a collective mind. But that's what belief is. It's being able to see who somebody is now, get to know them, who they are, what they can do, what gifts they're bringing to the moment, and then project forward into what they can do. And that's belief. It's either belief or disbelief. Like if somebody tells me they want to do something and I don't believe it, then I'm not going to be very effective at helping them get there. So that piece is really, really important. Is this it's essentially a shared vision for who that athlete is and who they want to become, what they want to do, and then being able to communicate how to get there.
Do you think the enemy of belief is fear?
I think it begins with fear, and then that fear prompts something. And what is usually prompted, like the human brain wants to be correct. And so fear can prompt somebody to move away from a belief about themselves that they're unsure of to one that they can be more sure of. Like, if 0 is the baseline and I'm already at 0, at least I know I can get here, right? I can stay there. So there's some certainty there. So I think fear leads to uncertainty, and uncertainty can either be exciting or can create more fear. That leads to a story. I think the fear leads to the story that's probably the enemy.
Interesting. Yes, fear is a story that plays out in your head over and over, and you ruminate on it, and that can be devastating.
Yeah, because again, we want to be right. We want to be correct, and we're going to move towards the sort of the dominant images that we have in our mind. And if it's fear, you're thinking of, I don't want this to happen. And what you're thinking is, don't think of a pink elephant and you have the image of the pink elephant. So I think what we try to do as coaches when we're at our best is to create a compelling vision, something that we want to move towards, that's exciting, maybe inspiring a little bit of fear, like, whoa, that's so exciting, it's scary, but still compelling enough to be able to move through that fear.
I feel like everybody's always on everything in life's the hero's journey, and we're all on this journey together. And some people are successful at it and some people aren't, but it doesn't really matter. It's what you learn along the way. Fear is always the antagonist. You're someone who, I think that you're intimate with emotions around fear, and you've been hit pretty hard. I think this is a good dovetail to something that I was aware of but didn't know the story about. I didn't know that you had cancer in college, and so you got tested very early on. Can you explain the story behind that and what you were feeling at the time and how you managed your career?
Sure. I was late to swimming. I started when I was 15, wasn't very good, but improved really quickly and was good enough to swim at Duke, which didn't have a great team then. In fact, the year before I got there, they announced they were cutting and then they brought it back. So I got a spot basically, but had a great freshman year, was going to train in the summer to try to win junior nationals. I was pretty young, went into the meet seated first. And that was the first meet where I experienced disappointment. It was a 50-meter pool. I'd only trained 50 yards. I did a backstroke turn at 5 yards instead of 5 meters. That left me a couple inches short of the wall, and I struggled. And for the next 3 months, there was more and more struggle. And I thought, that performance was a bummer, but I don't think there's something operating, in the back of my mind that's keeping me from performing well. Got worse and worse. Eventually, I went to the hospital with this really bad stomach pain, was diagnosed with testicular cancer that had spread. was a big tumor in my abdomen, 20 some tumors in each lung, and then some other tumors along my spine. So they had metastasized and really affected my health quite a bit. And my parents were physicians at Duke, where I was attending at the time. And so they got me into some really good people really quickly, but it still took a couple days to figure out what it was. And it's the classic story of a teenager, feeling like they are invincible to all of a sudden being faced with death. And at that time, this is the 80s, a cancer diagnosis was, to me anyway, a death sentence. And it wasn't known to be testicular cancer until a few days later. And then at that point, that was known to be curable, but not, I think the percentages that they gave my parents were something like 50% that he'll live. And the cool thing is that the treatment that I got is still being given today. It was experimental at the time. It was a good experiment. And so I was a beneficiary of that. But man, I went from being 210 pounds to 155. I had 60 days in the hospital, 2 massive surgeries. And I went from being what I thought of as this very in shape, strong person to not being able to walk upstairs, couldn't swim. I couldn't swim 500 without vomiting. It was, I wouldn't say humbling. It was just, it was a massive dose of perspective and reality. Illusion shattering.
How old were you?
19.
Oh, you were a baby.
Baby.
Yeah, that's tough. That's you grow up really fast, don't you?
Yeah. And in so many ways, just the sickness and being in a hospital and, this incredible appreciation for science and professionals and, people who have dedicated their lives to this one specialty, appreciation for my parents, for teammates. Yeah, it was really pivotal time in my life.
You said that in the magazine Future, you touch on this and you said your coach was with you every day. What did that teach you? What did that explain?
Man, so Robert Thompson was coach at Duke for many years, from late 70s until 2005, because I think he retired right when I took this job at Tennessee, and did almost all of it, most of those years by himself. He coached 2 teams by himself. He had volunteer assistants every once in a while. Every single day that I was in the hospital, which was across campus from the pool, Bob Thompson was in my room. We called him Coach Thompson, Coach. And he came to visit me when I was knocked out with the chemo. Was really rough. That pretty much have to knock me out so I wouldn't be nauseated the whole time. He visited me the day I was in surgery for 16 hours. He visited me every day after. So every day he left that pool, came to see me, and sometimes we'd talk and sometimes he would just be there. And that left such a massive impression on me. Of course, my parents were there. It's the hometown, and it's where they worked, and my teammates were there. But man, my coach, who had a team to run, 2 teams to run, was there with me every day. And I was sure I was going to live. I don't know what anybody else thought, but he wasn't there to try to coach me back to get him some points. He was there because he really cared about me. And that I think he had a sense that just his presence was inspiring to me, and gave me this grounding in, I'm part of a team, I'm valued, and I've got people that care about me. It was incredibly impactful, so impactful that I was sure after that I wanted to be a coach. I wanted to be able to give people things like that.
That was my follow-up question, which was, was this the moment? Had it ever occurred to you before, maybe I want to be a coach? Or was it this a defining moment? It's like, wow, this is impactful. This is powerful. This is what I want to do.
Yeah, it was a solidifying moment. I had another incredible coach in high school. His name was Jim Maxwell. And he was a family friend. He's the reason I got into swimming. And he I don't think ever got paid for coaching, but had a way of inspiring these Jordan high school swimmers, mostly high school only swimmers, to do incredible things in the pool. He would celebrate a best time with probably more energy and enthusiasm than he'd celebrate somebody who was a year-round swimmer who swam a vast time that won a meet, but wasn't really, didn't have this massive change. Like we had people on the team, including myself. My first ever 100 backstroke was about 115 yards. So I was able to drop a lot of time, and he had this stat of the number of seconds that we dropped. And that's certainly a stat for improvement. And it's also a stat for, we were pretty terrible at the beginning of the season, right? So if you can drop 15 seconds, but he made it seem like this incredible achievement, which, and it is. There's no doubt it's an incredible achievement to do anything better than you've ever done before. And so I got tuned into that. It's intoxicating actually to improve, to work, get better, work, get better. So I was hooked on that and wanted to help people do that. So I knew I was going to be a coach, but I think after the sickness, I started thinking more and more, I could see myself being a college coach or more than a coach for people 3 months out of the year.
I have a flow of questions, but I have to ask you this. With your perspective of your 1:15 100 backstroke, did you ever, standing at that moment in time, did you ever think you'd look into the future to the backstroke times today? Or, because we're witnessing stupid times. You and I are about the same age. So I look at these times and I'm just like, this doesn't make sense to me. These human beings are too fast. And if we can go this fast, where are we going? Do you ever have that moment? Or maybe you're too close to it. But if you're not on a pool deck as a coach and you're seeing this, you're going, we're moving into a stupid area.
I think I would have at that time, I would have looked at somebody going a 43-second 100-yard backstroke and thought that I was witnessing sorcery. Like the way people move underwater, they were not doing back then. The explosiveness, the control of the water, just the sheer beauty. I think I really would have thought I had landed on another planet. I think it's so different to what I was seeing and experiencing back then.
This is a planet you've terraformed. You've helped terraform and create, and which is really cool. We talked about fear, and I think fear is gonna weave through this conversation. But I wanted to know just from you is do we need adversity? You've experienced extreme adversity. Do we need adversity to be greater? Do you need adversity to be a greater coach?
I think short answer is yes, and longer answer is whether we think we need it or not, it's going to come. I think there are no stories of people who have sailed through to great accomplishments in a straight line without adversity, and yet, very often, there's kind of this implicit expectation that that's the way it's going to work. Because we can make somebody's journey look that way from the outside. I'll use Erica Brown Connolly as an example. Sophomore year, all of a sudden, she's got this meteoric rise. And she made it look easy for the next 3 years. But her freshman year was really challenging for her. She was in a dark place often. And that dark place she decided she did not want to stay there. I think when we experience adversity, we realize we don't want to stay here. So we need to do something to change. And Erica did that. She struggled and, probably tried a number of different things without knowing she's trying them, but had this one pivotal conversation with her parents that summer, where basically they said, look at what you have. You have so much to be grateful for. Focus on that. And she did. And she's very strong in her faith. And that gave her kind of a structure for being able to express gratitude and experience gratitude. And her worldview shifted. It wouldn't have if she hadn't struggled. Like that answer was there for her all along. Like it's not that her parents all of a sudden say, hey, we just learned this about gratitude. Her parents live it, her upbringing, her coaching. But until we're ready for something, then we don't incorporate it. And I think adversity allows us to be ready for the next thing we need to do to move forward in our lives.
I'm glad you brought her up. for two reasons. But one, you mentioned that her change, and you're not alluding, it sounds like it was personal, some stuff that was going on her freshman year. You mentioned that it was gratitude was the shift. When you're coaching an athlete, how do you identify an athlete's problem between the technical and the emotional? And I know that it probably involves both, but you're always dialing between the two.
Yeah, I think a good place to start is to know that they're related. So I believe that I don't want to speak in absolutes, but let me just throw it out there. I think any technical issue comes from an emotional reaction to something. So remember that what we're doing is moving through a medium that can kill us. So if we can't, people drown. And at some point, each of us had to learn to swim, which meant that we didn't know how to swim. We had to kind of overcome this fear of the water. And so swimming is this process of dynamically, putting energy into the water, balancing, shifting and shaping our bodies to reduce drag and to create propulsion. And when we lose balance, there's an emotional reaction. When we become hungry for air, we have an emotional reaction. And so the things that we repeatedly do in the water that create emotions kind of create these scripts, which end up being expressed physically as well as mentally and emotionally. It's kind of a complicated way of saying, like, if you're breathing late, it's probably because you want to hang on to that breath for a long time. It's not that you think that that's the best time to breathe technically, if you're trying to look good. And if you're crossing over, then you've lost your balance somewhere. And so that's helping you regain your balance. And so I think most, if not all, technical issues come from an emotional reaction to something that we're doing in the water. So I think not pulling those apart is important. I think addressing the actual, physical manifestation of a technical issue is important. But then also as a coach and athlete, trying to figure out, okay, what is it that I'm actually trying to do in that moment? And I think we make a mistake as coaches to tell them to make it look like I want you to look. Like, Mel, I don't like the way you breathe sideways and fly. So I want you to put your chin on the surface. Like, so if you were to try to please me, then you never would have breathed to the side. And I think we would have lost this, amazing story and career. And it, went to a lot of other people, but you discovered it and then you owned it. Right. And that was an emotional process. I think not every technical innovation is easy to access for some people because there are emotional blocks. Some people just can't physically get into certain positions and postures, and you can work on that outside the pool. But I think that the belief that those two things are ever completely separable is probably a mistake, and it's going to lead coaches to beat their heads against the wall. If you got a backstroker who crosses over and you've told them 100 times that they're crossing over, they're not willfully denying your advice, right? There's a reason that they're doing that. And it's probably because of an imbalance somewhere in their stroke, and it's the most comfortable thing for them to do in order to swim fast and meet the demands of a practice or a race.
You just went way meta on this. in terms of, it brings up this through the lens of my experience, it brings this up. I often wondered, I don't now, but for years I was like, why do we have more Olympic champions and elites who become coaches and become successful coaches? And it's because there's a complete disconnect between what they're doing and how they got there. And you've got to know all these intermittent steps. And you said something really interesting. You said, hey, you're crossing over, you're breathing late. It's a script. It's an algorithm. You've mapped your brain a certain way, and there's an emotional component. And going all the way back to the fact that we are in water and we are in a stress position, even though we've mastered it, we're always fighting balance, fighting for oxygen, and that is always emotional. I never thought about it that way. I'm an old man. I've never thought about it that way. You're the first person who put it into that context. It makes so much sense to me. When did you come up with that? When did that land?
The person who I think articulated this most clearly I don't want to speak for all of swimming history, but certainly in my experience and what I know in the last 30 years is Bill Boomer. He helped me move from looking at swimmers as a human being with physiology to a human being whose nervous system rules and whose physiology and biomechanics and emotional state is all interwoven. The primacy of the nervous system, the central role that breathing plays in the emotional life of a swimmer, I think he really helped crystallize those for me more than anybody else.
It feels like when you're stressed, things are off, school, relationships, parents, whatever, feels like you've got a vice around your lungs and your heart. And that's what is that vagal nerve? So that's your nervous system.
It's completely your nervous system. And there's also a woman, Rachel Vickery, has worked with our team for almost 10 years now, whose company is called Breathing and Performance. And she's helped me understand what you just described so much more and helped our team create strategies around the anxiety that comes from just daily life. You know, the life of a human, but a college student who wants to be elite in swimming or diving. There's a lot of research that says that the baseline level of anxiety that today's teenagers are living with is so much higher than it was 30 years ago, that 30 years ago, that anxiety level would have been diagnosed with a panic disorder or some other kind of psychological disorder. And now that's just baseline. So we dedicate thought, energy, intentionality, acknowledgement just to that challenge that you described, that the nervous system is, it's what we do, what we use to sense the world, to make sense of the world, to experience the world, to make an impact on the world. And that nervous system has so many different states that it can be in. And if we can learn to control that, get some measure of control over it, then I think we can have a lot more control over our lives. Like we can come closer to leading the lives that we want.
I'm not outing anybody by saying this, but what we're talking about, of course, isn't woo-woo, and it is central to success right now. We've witnessed this on a global stage with Simone Manuel, who's vocal about it, and with Caleb Dressel, vocal about it. And they lost chunks of their career. Losing chunks of your career at a time when you are at your physical prime that's tough. It's catastrophic. It's hard to overcome. But it's if you're a parent, you see it with your kids. They live in judgment. They live in this ecosphere of digital judgment. And So as a coach, it sounds like this is a layer at the Tennessee program where it's like we're addressing this.
We acknowledge it, we address it, and it's just it's what we all experience, everybody. So I do feel so inspired by this generation. Like they're so resilient and full of life and full of creativity, and they just make me laugh. They are so capable of doing extraordinary things. Like they work their tails off. I get angry when I hear about people who criticize kids today. It's been happening for eons because it's just human beings. But I also think that they're dealing with things that we didn't necessarily have to deal with. There's the sense that never goes away that they're being judged. And I think if we don't acknowledge it, then we're encouraging them to keep some of those anxieties suppressed. And I think that can lead to a lot of disorder.
We were talking a little bit earlier about Erica Brown. You used her as an example. And I felt like I got to know you better through the Erica Brown experience because I guess it was a conference meet. Was it a conference meet where she had a false start? Is that correct?
So I don't think she had one. She just lit up SECs her last few years, but she had a memorable mistake at NCAAs.
Was it NCAAs? Was it a false start?
It was, no, she swam butterfly in the 4x50 freestyle.
Oh my God, that's right.
I think that's what you're referring
to. There was more than one. There was more than one moment. Everybody has these moments. Let's just say that. Everybody has these moments in their career. So it was more than one moment. But here's the takeaway. I just asked you how you managed that as a coach, and it was as an aside on deck, and you explained how you did that. And my thought was, that was not my experience as a swimmer. And but it absolutely made sense. And so I think that you know what I'm talking about. Can you explain to me, you have an elite athlete who's doing great. They make a big mistake on the biggest stage in college sports and NCAA sports. How did you manage that?
So I think that my first reaction was shock when I saw her. If this was it, and we've had, plenty of DQs, and the surprise has become almost a cue to take a deep breath and to react. Okay, take a deep breath, because now you're sort of, as a coach and a leader, you're being called into action, because that athlete is going to hurt. I think Erica swimming fly instead of freestyle, it wasn't a DQ, but we got 17th, so we didn't get another swim. And of course it was, it made a headline. There's immediate shame. And that's a perfect example of immediate shame. What kind of mistake, what kind of lack of preparation. And I felt it like, okay, I think one of the first things I said to assistant coaches, I don't know how to prepare for this. And so, like, I'm not going to remind everybody in the free relay, okay, we're swimming freestyle. Like, they know that. But that's like an immediate focus on me. And I caught myself, this is before she's even done swimming, and thought she's going to be hurting. And so I think like any kind of, shame is something that I think no one should experience. It's a horrible emotion. I think it's very difficult to bounce back from. And for somebody giving their best effort, that is the last thing that they need to feel. I think grief and sadness and compassion for their teammates, like feeling like I let them down, those are all really raw and tender emotions that need care, because they can each move into shame, which is diminishing and it contracts a human being. And I hate that with every fiber of my body. I hate seeing people be shrunken or contracted, especially the people that I am connected to and coach. So that's the motivating factor for me. And I don't have a playbook other than to feel like, okay, what this person needs from me is, it's like you said earlier with my coach in the hospital room, was just presence. Be present, give them a hug, tell them that they're okay. And I do think at some point in that day, I said someday we're going to laugh about this, but it wasn't for a while that she felt like it was okay to laugh about it. And we have joked about it since then. But yeah, I think tuned into shame for the athletes that I coach, and I want to do everything that I can to keep them from feeling that.
You don't remember what you said in that private moment with me. And I'm going to say what you said. My wife's a therapist. She has a full practice. And I was like, do you have a degree in psychology? That is, you have an MS. It was textbook the way you handled it. Part of the reason why I asked was my experience screwing up at a big meet. I was screamed at to the point that spittle was flying in my face. And that was my experience. And I expected to get that experience. And I was kind of curious as to how you would handle it. And this is what you said to me. You said, well, it was a big moment for her. It was a tough moment, and I needed her to feel it. We needed to honor that moment. She had to feel it. So we took a moment and we felt that the disappointment of this mistake, because if we didn't do it, we couldn't move on from it. So we had to honor what it was. It was a big one, and then we had to move on from it. And he goes, once we had that, we could move on.
Yeah.
So you were in the moment of like, that is textbook what happens when you're sitting with your therapist in the room with, staring at the other chair. That's how you handle those moments. But you handled it at the height of excitement and stress that way. And the way you explained it to me on deck, I asked you on deck, and you're like, oh, this is how we handle it. We handled it. We had to honor the moment. We had to feel the moment. We had to, feel the stress of it so that we could move on. And now we're moving on. And then you walked off. And I was like, I feel like I really know Matt Kredich now.
Yeah, that is true. And that's what I mean by presence. Like you're in a moment that did does mean so much to that athlete. And it's a moment of grief. It's like being with somebody after they get third at Olympic trials. That's sort of the classic in our sport of just coming up short. And Molly Hannes experienced that one year. But there's so many versions of that. And I think it's important to honor the grief, because if you don't honor it, then it does turn into shame. And I think being in that moment means experiencing it fully.
Okay. Let's move off of that. I want to talk to you about success and what you said in your magazine feature, and you described it as a process. What is your process of success?
Well, I think it's the process is beyond swimming. It is really rooted in learning. When you move it into performance, human performance, it's about setting a goal to do something you've never done before, or know something you've ever done before, or create something you never created before, and then knowing that the growth is demanded in order to be able to do that. You need to grow into a person who can do these things, and in order to grow, you need stimulus, you need stress, you need overload, and then you need recovery. And recovery also means learning. So the process of moving towards a goal means taking steps and then having an evaluation and recovery period, take more steps, have an evaluation and recovery period. And when that process is fairly well refined and understood between everybody that's a part of it, then there's this synergy that starts to happen where everyone who's involved in it, from a coaching or support standpoint to the actual doing of the thing, like the athletes, this is what the athletes do, and they do it together. When that becomes shared, then that synergy that's created, I think, really accelerates the process and accelerates other processes like discovery. So not only discovery of things, but discovery of character. Like, this moment demands the application of discipline, resilience, courage, and maybe at a level that I've never had before, or that this athlete has never displayed before. And when they do, then you see movement or you see progress, that's intoxicating. And so that process to me is success. Like, being engaged in a process that is clearly moving a person in a direction that they want to go in, that is success. The end goal it's the place that you're going, but it's not the ground that you really tread on. And I think you can have great success along the way to ultimately failing at something. And that's not just to say, it's not something that I say to make myself feel better about coming up short. Is actually the thing that gets me up in the morning. It's like, we're about to host SECs, and we've won it twice out of, I don't know how many times I've competed in it and not won it, but it's a lot more. And it's not the winning that keeps me coming back, because the winning was so great that I just got to have more. It's that the process of chasing that goal is so much fun, and there's so much success that I enjoy along the way. That's essentially, I hope, sharing what other people feel like is their own personal success and their own shared success that we sense for the whole team.
My favorite part of the season was never the beginning when you were getting back into it, or the end when you had to go perform. It was always deep into the season when it was cold outside, and when your yardage, when you were paying the bank on a block that was huge, and you were just always in it. And I felt somewhat numb, but super fit, and I could just hum and live. And I felt like that was the marrow of the swim experience. And it always felt like it was, early January. And I love that. Is there a favorite part of the season for you? Because I think you talked about you're basically saying it, but the process could be the whole process. But yeah, I loved being at the height of training when it was the hardest.
I love that too, actually. And you and I are close to the same age. And so it's been a while since we've been swimmers, and you had many more like high level successes than I did, but I had some, and I still remember what you just described. Like that feeling of being so strong and in control and capable and fit and tired, and having met challenges and being able to meet any challenge that comes your way is awesome. And to me, that's a great part of the season. It's like January, beginning of February, and people start just doing things that are amazing in practice, including, meeting the challenge of a really hard set or big practice. But my favorite part of the season, I honestly believe this, Mel, it's the one we're in. Like whatever season, whatever phase I'm in is my favorite. I tell parents that too, like especially parents of young kids, like what was your favorite phase? And I do believe it was whatever one we were in was my favorite, because there's a really critical piece of that season or elements of that season that is either going to set you up for success or, define your struggles for the rest of the season. So there's a challenge that needs to be met. And I think I'd get real tired of if every day we're like September 20th, like we're all trying to get into shape, we're trying to learn skills, trying to organize, get to know, but there's some energy around that too. And then I'd also feel probably exhausted if every day we're like today, where, we're going to test out some race-paced swimming, and that's really exciting and really cool, but we've built this. And so knowing what went into this practice today makes this practice that much more special.
I should know, we're capturing this before SECs. We might not release it before SECs. We might release it right after. I'm not sure. We'll keep you posted. Right. I'll keep you posted, Matt. But just out of curiosity, is hosting SECs, is the weight of that, does it make it a harder conference championship? Does it make it an easier conference championship?
Yes and yes. I think the week or so leading into the meet is filled with just a lot of stuff to do, busyness, deadlines. We've got an amazing event staff here led by Marshall Goldman, who is a coach. So he knows what it takes to put on a championship meet, and it's a lot. And so there's a lot going on, and it's kind of hard to focus around some of this stuff sometimes. But boy, when the meet starts, it is so great to be in our home pool. It's comforting, it's relaxing, it's familiar. We love it. We love hosting.
It's also good. You come off a conference, you're at home. We get right back into it, get ready for NC2As. I like that. Just you and I, same era. We've said that a few times. You said that you mentioned in your magazine feature that your philosophy on modern training, of course, it's evolved, it's changed. You once believed swimmers could only swim fast 2 or 3 times a year. What forced you to rethink that?
Well, just experience. I mean, I love the willingness that people have had through swimming history, like Dave Salo in the 90s, to buck what is commonly believed. And I think he set a great example for modern coaches that you can get aerobic conditioning not by just swimming long and slow, but by swimming fast. Your heart's beating, your metabolism is a lot closer to what it's going to be when you race, and the practice of swimming fast, recovering in a short period, swimming fast, recovering in a short period, enduring that. He challenged the status quo. So that definitely got me thinking. There's a guy named Clive Rushton who was a great British coach. He coached in a number of different countries, but also just a great thinker and synthesizer. I spent a lot of time with him. He was a great mentor of mine, and he challenged me that we should be doing something fast every day in practice. And it's not just like hard and fast, but go fast. And Jan Olbrecht just challenged me. Like, I've asked him, how much sprinting can we do? He's like, well, if you mean sprints is less than 10 seconds, you can sprint all the time. Todd DeSorbo and Braden Holloway really challenged that as well. So I think there are a number of coaches and influences who have come along and done things differently and demonstrated, I think, that you can swim fast whenever you want to swim fast. Now, there's also the reality of, especially 200s and 100s and long course, that there are elements of training that take away speed. And if you're going to build some of these qualities of a performance and create adaptations, then you will lose some speed for a period of time. If you know that, then you can do it intentionally. So I don't believe that whole paradigm is out the window, but I love the way that people have come along and challenged the status quo with success, like great, undeniable success. And so I think we're all kind of continuing to rework our mental models. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have wanted to suit up for every dual meet. And now I do it, and I don't complain about it. I don't think it's hurting us.
We got to suit up. We got to suit up. We got to suit up. You got to swim fast. I always found this back at, just the generation of 80s, 90s, and the early aughts. There were a lot of great. I was closer to those peers, of course, and intimate with their training. And we were all doing really intense work, which is very different than what's happening now. It was doing a lot of slow, long, high yardage, heavy volume. But seems like every peer that I talked to, we always had this sort of toolkit that we used, which was, we're sprinting every day. Psychologically, within some practice, you could be doing 10 times 400 IM, but you were going to do something fast if that's all you had, and that was your main set. And I found that was a differentiator between some people, from athletes who ended up on the podium and those who didn't. But it seemed like that was one consistent trait, and they weren't getting it from the coach.
I'm not surprised. Yeah. I think as coaches, we need to trust the athletes probably more than is traditional, because what you described, I think, is this hunger for something, like this need to swim fast. And there are athletes who have this hunger for aerobic training. Like, I need a dose of, an hour of going in and around threshold, like, or a 2 hours, long, slow swim. There are people who feel that and need it. And I think there's this intuition that's way more accurate than I think has traditionally been, the athletes have traditionally gotten credit for.
Something that was interesting, I thought, in the future that I just love, because I love your wife. Your wife told you at one point that you wear your feelings, and that was negatively impacting your coaching. Although I don't think you framed it that way, and I can't see her saying that, but maybe she did. But you wear your feelings, and that was having an impact on your athletes, and you got very sensitive about it, and then told us an entire story in print about how you tried to really manage that. Can you share a little bit of that with us?
I'd love to. So Kim is a choral conductor. And if you ever have the chance to watch a great conductor up close, you should do it, because the physical presence and skill that they demonstrate is really breathtaking. And the best ones they are artists, but they're physical artists as well as musical. And so she was immersed in this program where her mentors, if you've seen the movie Whiplash, like the instructor from Whiplash, like, she was so hard on Kim and all of these students. But Kim was a really good student, and what she learned was so much about her presence and her groundedness and her posture, her body language. And so this is at Brown University, and I think I'd been there 3 years, and we had done okay, but we were hosting the championships and had a chance to win. And after the first night, and I knew we had a chance to win, and the first night something didn't go right, and I was like, dang it if we don't win. And I was worrying about things. There's no perfect meet, and this was not perfect. And I went home that night, and it was after the first session, and she said, you don't look like you're having a lot of fun, and the team senses it. I'm like, well, we can win, and we didn't do what we needed to. And she's like, hang on. You can know all that, and you can think all that, but you can't show it. What you need to show is this is fun, that you are confident in them, that even if they make a mistake, it's okay? And she said, the best thing you can do is just smile. So I'm like, okay. Next night we had a really good morning that night. We were okay. Something was going well, some not. And something happened that wasn't great. And I just smiled. And I remember turning around and looking at her in the stands and smiling and saying, how am I doing? And she gave me the big thumbs up. And that was such an important lesson for me, that the team was basically borrowing my nervous system. Like that was being transmitted into the collective, and just smiling and standing up straight and realizing it's all going to be okay, I think allowed me to be more calm, and certainly allowed them to be more calm, which meant that they got to do what they were prepared to do rather than worrying about whether I'm happy or not.
You learned that lesson a long time ago, allegedly. I'm sure it's a process. That's your own process.
I don't think I've ever fully learned it, but yes, it is a process.
So how much of leadership is emotional regulation?
Oh, it's such a critical piece. I mean, if you look at any instance of great leadership, I think that leader is almost as the first and most important thing they do, modeling the emotions that the followers are going to take on.
Right. Well, it's I love these stories. I also love that Kim came into your feature in the magazine, and she has a presence here.
Oh man, she's my greatest coach.
So yeah, how I feel like there is success, and then there's great success if you found the right partner. There's a whole life is too hard without having one of those. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
She's both an inspiration and a comfort, and she's given me some never hard edged, but just really direct feedback in the past when I've needed it. She's extraordinary.
On this topic of just emotional regulation and not wearing your feelings, do athletes sense authenticity or just energy?
Yeah, that is a really good question. I think authenticity first. I think we as humans are very tuned into energy, and whether it's conscious or not, we do transmit energy to one another. And if someone with dark energy walks into a room, we feel it, and that may be primary. But authenticity sort of follows that. So if the energy is really positive, and somebody presents it positively, it's awesome. Like it's this great combination. If the energy is negative and somebody presents positively, then there's more, I think, skepticism, and almost like there's this dissonance that, again, maybe registering subconsciously, but it's real. And I think if I think back to the team then, okay, we had just spent like 180 days of training together, and I wasn't great at emotional regulation. I know that, not that I am now, but not as I know I wasn't great then. And if they saw me smiling and struggling, then I think that they knew that was real. Like that this came from a place of caring, and yeah, he may be a little clumsy with it, but he's trying and he believes it. I think when a coach is not authentic, or a human in an interaction is not authentic, it's really that their presence doesn't match what they're putting forward doesn't match their energy. And that's not sustainable in a coach-athlete relationship.
I asked because I don't know if we're going to take the time to even talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it. So I'm a Tennessee alum. I swam for Tennessee. I swam for Coach Tremblay, who had a diminishing experience and a really ugly and unfortunate departure. You were coaching the women's team, and you had to take over the men's team. And I was thinking to myself, you have no idea how tough this is going to be. Let's just say I was aware of it. A lot of alums were aware of it because we were aware of what was going on. But you had to manage the men's team, and that was a completely different animal. That's why I asked you about authenticity and energy, because you needed to gain their trust very rapidly. And it's hard to gain trust in a relationship, because I think it's fair to say, looking back at this historic transition, that the men's team's trust was broken.
It was.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, I wish I had prioritized that even more, because I wasn't aware, I think, of the the trauma that they had experienced, like not just from the coach, but even from the fact of losing your head coach partway through the season. Like that's a massive trauma to a team. And I think the degree of woundedness that the men's team had experienced was beyond me, because I was so consumed with the challenge, kind of the logistical challenge of moving from a coach of a single gender team to a combined program, hiring a new staff. And then I think I mistook the trust for credibility. And, there are a lot of reasons why an athlete's not receptive to a coach. And the men at first were really varying degrees. Some of them were incredibly eager and excited, and others were not. But that was so difficult in so many ways, because each person was a story. Each had experienced something really difficult, and each probably needed a lot more a kind of individualized guidance than I was able to give them.
But the rest of that memoir is that you did it. And you rebuilt the team and you've gone on to make history and had great success. And now let's just say there was a hot minute where we thought you were going to go to Stanford. And everybody in the alumni network was very upset.
Man, Tennessee's home place.
I told them that there was no way you were leaving Knoxville because you kitted up your grill in the backyard. I was intimately aware of how amazing this was, and that would be tough to leave.
Can't leave the outdoor kitchen.
It is a full outdoor kitchen.
Yeah,
I've not seen this outdoor kitchen, but apparently Coleman says it's impressive.
Yeah, we had pancakes on it, and I've got a ribeye steak waiting for you.
You're speaking my language.
No,
Ribeye steak. I love ribeye steak. It's you clearly learn patience early on. You come across that way just in terms of disposition. From the first time I met you to hearing from other peers and parents and current athletes, you talk about this. You talk about Ben, your son, in the magazine, and you talk about, because he was autistic, and you talk about the loss, but just raising someone who's autistic, that requires enormous patience. Can you explain that experience and how it affected you as a coach? Being a father of raising a kid who's autistic.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, there's thinking before children and then thinking after, so different. Life before Ben in particular, life after, pre-diagnosis, post-diagnosis. There were so many changes that began essentially when we had twins, Miles and Ben. 2 years later, they were both diagnosed with learning disabilities, and Miles, I don't know if it's the correct terminology, but basically grew out of his, and Ben's diagnosis of autism became kind of a label that he lived with for his life. And autism we will not speak of autism the same way in 20 years that we do now. There's so much under that umbrella. And I think a lot of it, what may be in common between all kinds of autism include communication difficulties, like and not an inability, but a real difficulty in being able to communicate. And Ben presented with, moderate to strong autism. He struggled to communicate, didn't have that many words. And I think one of the best examples to help people understand what the life of an autistic person might be like is Ben's best friend, Michael, is a 26-year-old who was diagnosed with more severe autism, and he's considered an unreliable speaker. So you'll hear the terminology non-speakers or unreliable speakers. And what's been discovered in non-reliable speakers almost exclusively, or all of them, is that they have apraxia, an inability they have a really rich vocabulary and intellect and brilliant intellect that cannot be translated into fine motor, whether it's writing or speech. And if you think about it, and you have this intellect and no ability to express it in any way, then you and generations of non-speakers, unreliable speakers have been thought to be retarded, intellectually disabled. And all there is this block between what they are able to think and what they're able to express. Michael learned to spell using gross motor. And this is a big movement in the world of that segment of autism, and has unlocked his intellect, and he and other people. Ben, I think, was sort of straddled he had speech that was sometimes reliable, sometimes not. But to imagine having thoughts like you and I have and to not be able to express them leads to frustration, extreme frustration, confusion, loneliness, panic, and just it's like cover your mouth and tie up your hands and try to live life in this world. And you may bang your head. You may do other things that are self-soothing. And that's what we saw from Ben is like a 2 to 8-year-old is a lot of frustration. But Ben and humans are so resilient and so creative. And Ben found ways to express himself that were magical, like through music. He was a brilliant musician, through spelling, through scripts, songs, single words, actions, but it was not conventional and it was filled with frustration for him. And so as a parent, the challenge for us was 100% to first meet him where he was and let him know that we knew he was in there. We loved him. We knew him, that we weren't trying to fix him. We weren't trying to change him. And then we also had to kind of tap into his desire to be part of our world. So we wanted to go into his world and he wanted to be part of our world. And that dance just requires endless creativity and tons of patience and a lot of trial and error, a lot of error. And that describes coaching. There's endless patience, a lot of trial and error, a lot of error. And also I think it's so important to meet people where they are on some level. And also recognize everybody doesn't get to just stay in their world. That's not the world we live in. Like, we all need to meet each other. And some of us are in a position to help bring others into our world. And I think as a parent, that's your responsibility.
Thank you. You go a little, so if you're going to read this magazine feature, you're not going to get that much depth. We didn't quite go that deep, and I appreciate that response from you. Before we talked, I was thinking about how you've been shaped as a coach, and I know that what you experienced as a 19-year-old with cancer was big, a milestone. It had to be a defining moment. It had to change you, and the loss of Ben had to change you, and you have no control over that. So how did it change you? How has it changed you as a person? How has it changed you as a coach?
Oh man. So there's also, before his death and after his death. And it's some parts of the pre-death are almost like, the best way I can describe it, it's almost like there was one world is color, the other is black and white. And I'm not really sure. It depends on the day, which is which, because the loss of a child for me, and I think Kim would describe it the same way, is obliterating. It's the world just disintegrated, blew up, and yet it didn't. It kept going. Like, obviously, it kept going. It always does. But the world, as it appears now, is in so many ways different than it was. And I think it's the loss of Ben it puts me in touch with really deep pain every day. And I actually seek it. On days when I don't experience that pain, I feel it moving in me, and it's not good. When I'm able to feel it, I feel it moving in me, and it's like a ripening. There's a great author named Francis Weller who has this beautiful book on grief, and he calls it a ripening of the soul. If you have what he calls an apprenticeship with grief, it helps to ripen the soul. And to me, that's a beautiful way of thinking about it, because grief is love. It's been described as love with no place to go, no place to put it. But I don't think that's accurate, because I know exactly where to put it. I can just put it out into the world and feel that pain. And that opens up the possibility to feel a whole different kind of joy and ecstasy and mystery and appreciation. So it's almost like, I was able to play life in one octave or one register. And then all of a sudden this depth of pain was open to me, but also this, the ability for the spirit to soar, it was also opened up. And having that operating completely absent of swimming and then coming into coaching allows me to tune in differently, I think, to tune into the struggles that people have, to tune in to the little moments of life and creativity and joy and happiness. And then also really tune into the pain that people are feeling. So I hope I don't get as wrapped up in the things that used to bother me as I did. There's things that are really bothersome, and then things that are almost like annoying. They're almost amusing because they're a little bit annoying. And I didn't used to find as much amusement in those things as I do now. And then I also just have this, I think, just incredible appreciation for the trust that people put into me and our staff with this precious piece of life that they're experiencing at Tennessee. I don't fully appreciate it every moment of the day, but I think I appreciate it a lot more often. It's the, I get these gifts from people every single day. And I mean, to get even a little bit more deep, it goes more to purpose. Like if we believe, and I do, that each of us has this never before seen gift or set of gifts that we bring to the world. That the author I was talking about, Francis Weller, calls it medicine. We have this medicine that we're bringing to the world that the world needs now. We're involved in a sport that demands everything of us, emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally. And so we bear ourselves to each other in this pursuit, which means that these gifts have to come forward. We expose them whether we want to or not. And that is a privilege to be witness to these gifts, much less to be a part in helping people discover those and protect them and grow them and bring them into the world. So I did not see that as clearly as I see it before Ben died. I look at his life and see, this incredible gift at 24 year, and he would have known the number of days, 100 and some day gift. And I think to have been a part of that, there's nothing better than to witness it, to walk alongside it, to be intertwined with it, and then to continue to see the ripples that it has created in the world. It's incredible. And to me, that's what I get to do every day is I get to see those gifts being brought forth. I get to see that. I get to participate in this precious segment of life that each of these people shares with me and with each other. And it's magical. It's one of the best things in the world.
Talking to a swimming peer, I think, to hear this from you, I think I've learned more about loss and grief than I would ever learn anywhere else. But grief is love with nowhere to go, but there is a place for it to go. You talk about the Tennessee culture as being joyful and competitive. Is this where you're arriving now in the how much longer are you going to coach? I mean, I don't want to call this the autumn of your coaching career, but it's like, I got to wonder about it.
I think I've got more behind me than I have in front of me.
Okay, correct. Yes, that is the perfect way to put it. But yeah, you've created this culture. You just call it joyful and competitive. Is this where we are right now?
Yeah, I think so. And it's the wonderful thing about culture and about, doing what it is that I do is that every day is new and brings something different. And I don't take any of it for granted, including that, no culture is static. So will we experience joy and will we meet competitive challenges well today? I hope so. It happens more often than not. And when it doesn't, I think there's a challenge there. And I love, trying to meet those challenges. Like why are we not competing well, or what's suppressing us today? And I will coach as long as I feel like I can do this job really well. And I care so much about this team and the people who have come before, the people who are here, the people who have promised to come here. If I don't feel like I can serve them well, then it's really important to me that somebody does. And so I'm more excited about coaching than I ever have been. I don't see myself coaching when I'm 80. There are also other things that I want to do, but so far I've been able to do a lot and coach. So like I'm going sailing in May and went sailing last spring, and I might do it every spring from now on. And I don't need to not coach to sail. So I think there are a lot of things I want to do, but I don't have to leave coaching to do them.
Where are you sailing?
British Virgin Islands.
And describe that type of joy. What is the beauty of sailing? I mean, I get the water as a medium. What does it mean to you?
Oh man, if you've ever sailed and actually been the one person, is you the boat, the wind, and the water. There's just this connection, I think, to the water that I feel, and I feel it as much in a small boat as I do in a big one. A big one allows you to sleep on it and you can get other places faster. And in the Virgin Islands, there are amazing places to see and like a lot of snorkeling to do and family time on the boat. You can fish, you can scuba. I had two amazing experiences growing up where my father got certified to charter a boat, took our family. We had just 7 magical days on the water twice, and always wanted to give that to my family. Ben always wanted to live on a boat, and we even had set up kind of a savings plan for him buying a boat where he was probably going to be able to get enough money to buy a boat in around the year 2300, but he was on his way. And he was thinking of other ways to make more money so that day could come sooner. But there's this kind of emotional attachment that I have to sailing, and it has to do with people. It has to do with, connection to the water and to nature and to my family, who's my father and mother who've passed, and my current family that I just want to do things with.
My final question is loaded, but I feel like you've already answered it. If the stopwatch disappeared in swimming, would you still coach?
Oh, man. I don't need a stopwatch to coach. In fact, I find myself, and I think this is a good sign, I carry the stopwatch onto the deck less and less. I remember first few years, it was all about how fast are they going? Where does this fit on the charts? Or Banchek's charts had just come out. Clive rushed in and gave me these charts. I wanted to know how fast every lap was. And because you put this and that together and you get that. And that's how you create a fast performance. And now I could probably coach the rest of my life without a stopwatch. And I'm not sure how we would time the end of season meet, but the relationship with the water that athletes have has nothing to do with the stopwatch. The relationship that they have with each other clearly doesn't. The relationship I have with them doesn't. What they discover about themselves that helps them become who they're going to be has nothing to do with a stopwatch, right? And it's a cool tool for the experiment, the learning process, but for discovery and growth and evolution, that has nothing to do with coaching.